What's up, everybody? Andre Bailey here with my good friend Scott Anez. Change Everything Live. Scott, what do you think, man?
Oh, this is unbelievable. I'm coming over here to downtown Orlando, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe a little office and a cell phone camera, and you got your boys over here. You got Marina keeping up with all the testosterone in this room. It's unbelievable.
There's a lot of A-types in this room.
This is impressive.
So, Scott, this is Change Everything Live. You've never been here before.
This is awesome.
It's a new show we're doing that's a little bit a combination podcast, blog, social media venture, and hopefully at some point we're going to do this on regular TV. You know, trying to find good guests like yourself. Scott Anez, if you do not know him, is the voice of the Orlando Magic. You've been that for quite a while.
Voice of Inside Magic
Inside
on
Magic.
ESPN 580, and I do a sports show on ESPN. I also do
How long
a
you been
news
doing that?
show. Oh, gosh, Andre, long time. But on ESPN, we just started 6 years ago. For 6 years on ESPN 580, I've been in that building with Cox Media Group for nearly 30 years.
You don't look old enough to do
Well,
anything
thank
for 30
you for
years.
saying that. I'll slip a 20 in your leather pants here before long. But
Oh, we're going with
like
the leather pants
like
already.
the pants, by the way, really, really nice. No, I've been there for 30 years, and I'm absolutely blessed because it doesn't happen for a person and you know about our business. I mean, obviously you know about it. It's very transient. And for a person to grow up in Central Florida, go to high school here, go to college here, get your first job in media here, and stay in the same building for 30 years, it's unheard of. I like to think that the reason why I've stayed around so long is that I'm very mediocre and under the radar, and also very cheap.
So you can't get fired with some kind of like Roseanne comment off the cuff.
I can tell you.
Is that what's going to happen tonight? Is this the night?
I'm hoping that does not happen on the show because typically I'm on the other end of this thing now.
Yeah. So we're about to go live, and Scott's like, "All right, so Andre, you know this is live." I was like, "Yeah." So I promise, Scott, I'm
This
not going
is
to get you in
great,
any
man.
trouble.
No,
But
this is outstanding.
So it's Change Everything Live, and what we want to do tonight is we have a great guest on, Scott Anez with the Orlando Magic and News 96.5. You're the host of the midday show there.
Yep, Orlando's News at Noon.
News at Noon,
Yep.
and you also do the Magic and ESPN Radio. How often do ESPN Radio?
Every day.
Every-
Every day, 4 o'clock, ESPN 580. We do our thing.
So you do news, you do politics, you're all over the place.
Yeah. As you well know, in our business, especially today, knowing that you have venues like this now, whereas 10, 15, 20 years ago, you had traditional media and that was it. And now we're competing with guys like you.
Just
You
wait.
guys are trying to put me out of business.
That's absolutely true. So before we get going today, and our topic today is, if you want to, we're going to pan up to the screen here, finding direction for your life. When I thought, look at this great picture of
That's
him too.
horrendous.
Yeah,
it's just horrendous.
You're looking a little bit
A little
carby,
chubby.
a little carby.
A little
there.
chubby. Is that what you're going to tell me?
Not chubby. I would just say you had a few more rice cakes in this
Okay,
photo than you
all right.
currently have.
You're
That's all I'm
absolutely
saying.
right. You're
but
absolutely right.
today, this is what we do, Scott. We find a good person to come on and chat, and we take a topic. Today we're going to talk about finding your direction for life. You're a guy that inspires me with the consistency of how you live your life and how you produce your art and your craft. What's interesting, I heard this said a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was fantastic, and it made me think about you when I was thinking of a topic of having you on. I heard someone say, you're not truly great until you're great consistently. And actually, I think they were saying it in a sports context. I think they were talking about LeBron James and his, 8 times. Is it 8 times that he's now made it to the NBA Finals in a row?
Yep.
And they were saying you're not great until you're great consistently. And I think that you embody that because you're great not only with ESPN Radio and the Orlando Magic and a lot of the other stuff you do on air, but you're great in the community and you have a great family. And so we're going to talk about this topic. But before we do that, I want you to meet some of the great folks here.
Absolutely.
Let's start down at the end of Murderers Row here with Philip Deems. And I don't really know why Philip's here, but he's just...
I'm a fan, and I just kind of hang out.
Yeah, he's a groupie. Like,
can I borrow the hat sometimes,
Yeah,
Phil?
the hat
is
Absolutely
amazing.
love it.
I'm having bad hair day.
Outstanding. I got you.
That's
It's
amazing.
humid outside.
So, go ahead. You guys introduce yourself. Go around.
I'm Alex, producer.
Yeah, and I'm Daniel, working audio.
And turn that camera around. Uh-oh, here it goes. Here it goes.
And I'm Rena, the moving camera.
Nice.
Yes.
Marina brightens up the entire room.
Yeah, we have a quota here. We have to have at least one female on.
Please.
And they won't let us count Philip.
Please,
so we
please
have to,
do. Love it.
Oh, sorry.
This setup is awesome. You guys are awesome. Thanks for inviting me.
No, it's going to be great. So, let's dive in a second. And why don't you put up that first graphic? So I made a graphic here. And you know what? I'm not going to get up. I'm going to have her kind of just pan in on that a second.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling lost. Actually, I will get up because, I like to contradict myself.
Harvey Levin. You're
Harvey
actually
Levin.
getting. Is this like TMZ? What's going on
All right,
here?
can you
This
hear
is
me?
awesome.
You all right? So we're talking today about feeling lost, 5 ways to find direction fast. And this is what we were really thinking about when we were putting together today's show. Number 1, if you want to find direction fast, count your blessings. I don't know about you, but when I get lost in the muck, in the mire of my own, oh, woe is me life, and I forget about the good things I have, the fact that I live in a country that has so much resources and wealth, the fact that I have a family that's healthy, the fact that I woke up today and I'm feeling good. When I count my blessings, that can help set a foundation for everything else that I need to go a new direction. That's number 1. Number 2, get serendipitous. What that means is think about the world that's happening around you and remember that I believe nothing happens on accident. So, hey, which direction do you want to go? What are some of the things happening in your life right now, even if they're negative, that could be turned into something positive? So start thinking in that cosmic, more universal or spiritual way about what's happening in your life and how it can turn into something great. Number 3, find your North Star. I can't stress this enough. We live in a world and in a society where they say there's no truth. They say there's nothing real, there's nothing that we can anchor ourselves, or there's no direction that is real that we need to go and follow. You need to find a North Star. You need to figure out what you believe. You need to find out what's important to you and let that guide you on your way to this new direction. Number 4, I like this one. Get a little angry. If your life is not going the way you want, you don't get another one. Get a little upset and use that anger to drive you a new direction. Number 5, take one new step today. One new step. Do one thing today in this new direction, and you might find that to be the first step in a pattern that begins change for your life. So we're going to put this online. We're going to share it on all our social media platforms, and then Scott and I are going to talk about these 5 things today and talk about a lot of other things. So, Scott, what do you think?
It's pretty awesome, man. I think, look, all 5 steps. I totally agree with it. Count your blessings. I talk to a number of people every day on the radio. And as you well know, Andre, there's a lot of rage out there. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration for whatever reason. And I think we all kind of need to take that advice you just gave us. Let's take a step back a little bit and find out, you know what? I don't have it so bad. I can actually put my feet on the ground when I get out of bed. I have my health. I have my family. I have a job, even though I may complain about that job quite a bit. So I think those are words to live by. That's awesome, man.
We live in a very interesting time, and one other thing I want to talk to you about the show. So we'll have people on right now live watching, and we can tell who's on. So just want to say hello to Amanda Carter's on, other guests if you have a question, if you're watching out there and you're watching live, ask a question. Scott Anez will answer now. I'll answer your question. Scott knows everything about the Magic. He just told me before we went on the air who they're picking. He got an email from Alex Martin letting us know who they're picking, but he won't share that with anyone but me, and I know. But if you want to ask, you can go ahead and ask. But so we'll be taking questions live on the show as well. So Scott, again, back to what you were just saying, it's an interesting time. We live in the richest country that's ever existed in the history of the world, with the most powerful army, and we have a lot of things to be happy about and to feel good about. But people people are feeling angry. If you look at some of the stats that are out right now, I won't get into them, but people are feeling more anxious. They're feeling more depressed. They're turning to opioids, for example, addiction in record numbers. I think this is a discussion that we need to have. I don't know that there's a simple answer, but I think it's important to say, hey, in a world with all of this energy swirling around us, a lot of anger, a lot of anxiety, maybe we need to look at some of the things we talked about just a second ago and figure out how we can anchor ourselves in a world where we don't have a lot of control.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think I can sort of go back to my business a little bit because I've been in it for so long. You see changes in our business, and change right now in our business is coming very frequently because of you, because of shows like this,
Yeah.
because of other media coming at traditional media and other people going other places. So dialogue is not what it was in the past. And I think, coming from a sports background especially, and certainly in news as well, but more especially in sports, you are encouraged to kind of stir the pot a little bit, right? To be provocative, to get the phone lines filled. Not that you want to be Joe Schlock, but you want to be provocative. And I think in the environment that we're in right now, with all the rage, and I call it a culture of outrage.
It's real.
It is very real, and I see it
like,
every day.
You do, and I would say this statement, and I want to see if you believe it's true. You've been in this business a long time, been answering callers for years and years and years. It's never been like it is
Never.
today. It's
No, I've
not even
never
close.
I've never seen the temperature the way it is today. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, the Orlando Magic hired their head coach, Steve Clifford. I've known Steve and known of Steve since 2007 when he was an assistant coach under Stan Van Gundy here in Orlando. Steve is a quality man and a quality head coach. All we got, all day long, and we were on the air all afternoon long with the live news conference and chats with Steve Clifford afterwards and a chat with the president of basketball operations, Jeff Weltman. All we got on the text line and on Twitter all day long was not just negative. Not just negative. Like, I can handle negative. Okay, the Orlando Magic have had 6 straight losing seasons, 6 straight non-playoff seasons. Okay, fine. But this negative turns into rage. It turns into outrage. And that's scary to me. This is a game. Okay, first and foremost. Now, it's not a game to these players. Obviously, it's their livelihood. But we get on, and we at ESPN, we work in the toy department. That's what we do, okay? And it's a lot different than news, obviously. News is the real deal. ESPN has the toy department, and I look forward to going over to ESPN each and every day and talking about toys. It's not toys anymore. It's not toys to a lot of people, and that's scary. The rhetoric being used yesterday about Steve Clifford, who is a good man.
And a person that most people, 99% of the people out there, don't even know who
Don't
that
know.
is.
Don't know. The rhetoric being used about Steve Clifford and the Orlando Magic organization and Alex Martins was through the roof to where I just had to get off the text line and get off the Twitter. The Twitter, I said.
The Twitter.
Because it drags you down. And you don't want to be around a medium or people who drag you down, and I know you're probably going to get into that, but that's just an example of how things have totally changed. You'd get negative reactions here and there, and that's certainly understandable, but that negativity has turned into a culture of outrage, and that to me is very, very disturbing.
Yeah, I think we're in a unique moment right now, and there's a lot of big factors. When we try to, I think, oversimplify a moment in time, I think that's an error. But I think there's some big factors right now. Obviously, Donald Trump's presidency, whatever your politics are, if you are on the left, he is the embodiment of everything you're against. And the guy does not, he's not short on strong statements, controversial statements. Yeah. And I think he enjoys, putting it to the people on their side. So if you're on the left, this is the worst moment ever. If you're on the right, you come at it from a different direction. And so in a time, Scott, when our economy is really as good as it's been ever. The stock market as high as it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Our unemployment is as low as it's ever been. This outrage, because I think of who the president is right now, and because of just this unrest that we see.
Mm-hmm.
Because of, I'll say this, I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, knowing you're coming on. We are more connected as a society through social media and through the internet than we've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
But we have lost, because of a lot of factors, community.
Yes.
We've lost this living together with each other, knowing your neighbors, connecting with real people in real life. We don't have that connectedness anymore. We don't have community anymore. And this is what I thought about. This became profound to me a couple days ago. That when you have incredible connection in society without deep community, connection without community leads to chaos. Connection without community leads to chaos, because now you're connected to everyone, but you have no depth in those relationships. So all that comes out is the worst.
Yes.
That's all we're seeing.
Yeah.
And then Donald Trump is he's the spark to always light a conversation that ultimately we struggle to have without him.
And that's the point. That's an excellent point. Look, there is no conversation.
No.
It's social media. It's the wild, wild west, and there is no discourse. There's nothing there. And again, our business, it's a scary time to be in my business right now, because 10 years ago, you really didn't worry what you said. You tried to be a professional and you did your studying and you scripted stuff out. Now, one false move with this culture of outrage that we're talking about and a lack of discourse, one false move and you got picketers outside the radio station.
Yeah. I was listening to, and by the way, for people that don't know me, I will piss you off from every angle. I absolutely have very strong beliefs that align with, listen, so Scott, I work on social issues like homelessness and poverty and have done so really my entire adult life. So many of those who are on the left or those who a little more blue, they can relate to that. They can relate to social justice, and they can relate when I look at an issue and say, hey, I think that corporate America is a little big and out of control in that area. And in this situation, we need adjustments, whatever the situation might be. So sometimes I line up left. Other times, I'm going to say, hey, I believe that issue over there, the real problem is we're not looking at it another direction. I have a background in theology. I am a lifelong Republican and have never changed that. So everybody hates me. So I just embrace
Join the crowd.
Well, because you can't win.
You cannot win.
You can't win. But I think what we have to look at though is what is the end game for our society here. When you can't hire a head coach for a local basketball team without outrage, what is the end game, and how do we look at reconnecting with each other in a real enough sense and to have meaningful dialogue? I will say this, though. I was going full circle to tell you that I was watching an interview with a gentleman by the name of Jordan Peterson, who is very controversial right now, if you know who that is. And, he I think he's got a lot of good things to say. Other times I think he, on purpose riles people up. But I was watching him being interviewed by a woman, I believe from the BBC. And as I watched this interview, what stood out to me is not whether I agreed or disagreed with Mr. Peterson. What stood out to me is how this interviewer was only asking him questions to try to get him to say something that she could seize upon. They weren't even having a conversation. She wasn't even interested in hearing what he had to say. It was, can I get him to make that one mistake? So what do you think about this movement? What do you think about what the president said about this? It wasn't dialogue.
No.
It was a dissection that wanted to lead to destruction. And I see it from everybody.
Yes.
I certainly am not just singling out that one reporter. I'm certainly not saying Mr. Peterson has all the answers. And you see it on both sides of discourse. Yeah. We're not really looking to have any conversations. We're looking to seize upon one thing and then put it in the Twitter, Facebook, BS magnifier, and then use that to make a full case that this person, whoever they are, all they are is this one statement.
Welcome to my world. That's it. You.
That's why you
stated
have
it
that
right
gray
on the
hair
head
now.
Again, yeah, exactly. What gray hair? I don't have any gray hair. It's gotcha. Every day I deal with. It used to be called gotcha journalism. Now it's just gotcha. Period. Everybody wants to play gotcha. I'm on the air for 3 hours a day in the off season, about 6 or 7 hours a day when the Orlando Magic are in full bloom. A time or two, a word or two will slip out of my mouth that I don't want to slip out of my mouth. And what am I immediately thinking? I'm not thinking, let's get on with this conversation. Let's get on with this interview. Let's get on with the broadcast. I'm thinking, okay, am I going to be on Awful Announcing tomorrow? Am I going to be on somebody's Twitter feed saying that I am a racist or I am a bigot or I am something? That's what you're thinking about. Now, unfortunately, and you try to put it out of your head because you have to. You're a professional. You have to do that. But that's what it's turned into. Everybody wants to play gotcha.
Yep. And so I'm going to really quickly, when I'm looking down at this, just know I'm looking at all your fan mail coming in on Facebook.
Oh, I'm big.
So,
I bet you I'm big out there right now.
Tim Weekly has a question. Why has some news stations like CNN, that's what he says here. I'm not saying this is true. This is his question. Why have some news stations like CNN become so biased, politically speaking, instead of just reporting the news out there? I can no longer watch them. Thanks. Magic fans, by the way, are just tired of all the losing year after year. Thanks.
I know Tim very well.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I think this is a good question.
Yes.
And by the way, I do want to say this. I think that just in case someone, I don't really get into this. Actually, I've never got into this, but just in case someone's wondering, I'm not a huge supporter of the President of the United States. I'm a Republican, have always been. I think he caused a lot of trouble that's totally unnecessary, and so I struggled to support him when he was running, and I'm a lifelong Republican. I sometimes agree with what he's trying to do and disagree completely with how he tries to do it.
Sure.
So, in case you were ever wondering, that's how I feel about all that.
Sure.
But I would say though that. That some of what he and others in regards to the media, I'm talking about the mainstream media, I think that people had feelings for a long time, like this gentleman, that the national news, biased, fake news, but I have a different perspective on that.
Okay.
I think it's tough when you're CNN, when you're Fox News. Journalism, to me, when I understood journalism, reminded me a lot of what I thought of nonprofit work. I do nonprofit work. I'm an advocate. I'm supposed to wake up as a nonprofit leader and advocate and think about the greater good.
Right.
How do we go fight for the greater good? And I can't put money first always. Usually I can't put money first. I've got to put the cause and the people first. And that's usually sacrificial. I've always understood journalism to have its power in putting money not at the top of the list, putting it at the bottom of the list, and putting journalistic ethics and truth. But how do you do that, Scott, when you're owned by billion-dollar companies and when you have, and I'm just being practical here a second. I think that you look at the Orlando Sentinel, you look at CNN, you look at Fox News. These are companies that are owned by billionaires and multi-billion-dollar conglomerates, and then they're asked to then hold this journalistic ethic. And I think of some of the local reporters here. I'm not going to name their names, but I sometimes say, "Oh, so your job and the way you think of your job is to be some watchdog for the community." But really, you just get clicks so some billionaire can buy another yacht.
That's it.
I mean,
Yeah.
right? So
That's the media business.
I just say this though. I think it's tough. I think it's tough in a tough environment to have to be a journalist when you have to think. On the one hand, you got into this to bring truth and to help people through journalism, but then if you don't get enough clicks with your dog and cat ran up a tree and firemen rescued them bullshit.
It's true.
Excuse my language.
Yeah.
Scott's a Catholic, so I'll have to pay penance for that one. But if don't you think there's a challenge there for journalists?
Yeah.
And maybe out of that, there's the seeds that have blossomed into what is now, I think I saw this last week, a large portion of this country no longer trusts the media at all.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Number one, I hear a lot of people say today that journalism has died. I think it died a long time ago, actually. And I think it died when the major corporations started to get involved in newsrooms. It was dead. When I got involved in journalism, being I started out as a news reporter at WDBO back in 1989. And I'll remember an old friend, Dave Wall, who was a legend in this town. Dave Wall used to answer the phone in the newsroom, and he used to tell me to take time with people because we are a public service. We are a public service. That's always stuck with me. Take time with people because we are providing a public service. Guess what? We're not a public service anymore. Everybody knows that. We're big time major business. Now, when you and I were growing up, well, maybe me. Now you're considerably younger than I am.
I'm 27.
Oh,
thank you.
yeah, all right, maybe 28. But it was all about Walter Cronkite. You had to watch Walter Cronkite at night. You had to know what Walter was going to tell you, and you took it as what? As gospel. It was Walter Cronkite. And when Walter Cronkite went to Vietnam and turned on the Vietnam War, you turned on the Vietnam War because Walter Cronkite turned on the Vietnam War. We never knew Walter Cronkite's politics, even though he was leaning towards the left. We never knew that back in the day. At least I didn't. You believed what Walter Cronkite said. Now you don't believe what anybody says. And that's a shame. And it all has to do, I mean, look, let's tell it like it is. Media is big business now. It used to be a public service. That's what it used to be. Newsrooms were created to be a public service, not big business.
For people that don't know, and I will butcher this, and Scott, you'll have to fix my history on this, but at one time, the major networks, there was only a handful of major networks, they were required to give a certain amount of time in the evening for news.
Correct.
And it was, that's where the government basically traded them.
Exactly.
Is that,
the
is that,
FCC.
am I saying that properly?
That is correct. So you had ABC, you had NBC with what was it? John Chancellor. When I was growing up, it was NBC, and Cronkite was on CBS, and Peter Jennings on ABC, and you trusted those men. You believed those men, and it's unfortunate that we live in a world today where we don't trust a whole lot. And I think going back to Tim's comment about CNN, it's not going back. And CNN has aligned themselves or itself with the left because, Tim, you well know this, you have to follow the money trail.
Yep.
You have to follow the television ratings. What gives them ratings is what? Hopping all over the president.
Yeah.
That's what gives them the ratings. So they'll continue this until the ratings and the money slip. That's how it works.
Yep. So I just wanted to let you know Dave Van Grove has a good question about the Magic we're going to get to later. Graham McGowan, Scotty, I've heard you both on 96.5 and ESPN 580. It's evident how hard you work to table your personal feelings and try to be impartial and report the facts. You know, asking how you've learned to do that, and I think we'll get into that in a second. Luis Morales, how you doing? I will say this about journalism. I think CNN and Fox News are the same company, just on different sides of a money-making bonanza. By the way, if anyone out there doesn't like Donald Trump, let me tell you who loves Donald Trump. CNN and Fox News.
Absolutely.
Because they are making more media, some of the mainstream media. The New York Times is having a renaissance just off of Donald Trump's presidency. And here's my only point. I am never against people making money. I'm a capitalist to the core. I love the idea that our country advances through big business. But when you take something like journalism and you put a reporter, any reporter, in a situation where they have to wake up and report the news and they have this journalistic ethic, but they have to balance it with the fact that if they do not get clicks and they don't get ratings, they're going to get fired.
Yeah.
Paul, the journalist, wakes up, kisses his wife next to him in the bed, and he has to think about the fact that if he doesn't report something that gives red meat to the left, if he's on CNN, he's going to get fired. The same guy on Fox News, if he doesn't give red meat to the people on the right, he's going to get fired.
Sure.
So I actually believe the media is a massive problem in our society, and I think the only way to fix it, in my opinion, is it has to go back to nonprofit. I do.
Guess what?
Not sports journalism.
No, sure, but guess what? It's never going back.
I know.
You know that.
But so watch this. Though. Watch this. It's never going back, but it's also in some ways completely failing. Like if you look at local papers, look at the Orlando Sentinel. The Orlando Sentinel has fired 80% of its staff in the past 10
And
years.
it's not only the Orlando Sentinel.
Every major
it's
paper.
Every major paper across the
And
US.
the only ones, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of the Sentinel. I'm a huge fan of the Sentinel. I know the team at the Sentinel well. I know their publisher. I know their team, their national team. I believe that they're failing financially because they're not doing what we're talking about. I think the Sentinel, for the most part, tries to walk a line, and I think it's impossible for a journalist to not be biased. We're all biased, Scott. I am the most biased person in the world to whatever I think, and so
Sure.
all of us are.
Sure, but the trick to being a professional journalist, at least back in the day, was I mentioned Walter Cronkite. You didn't know where he stood.
Yeah.
When you tuned in at 6:30 every night on CBS, you had no idea where he stood, and you really didn't care because you trusted Uncle Walter, right?
Yeah.
You trusted him.
Yep.
And now we don't trust anybody.
Yeah,
and that's sad. And my wife and I, who may be watching
Let's see.
tonight, I'm not quite sure, but my wife and I often talk about this, and we talk to our friends about this too. Where do you go to find the truth? And you just mentioned the Sentinel. Okay, they laid off an awful lot of people. Journalism is so important in a community. There's that
Absolutely.
word again. Because without these journalists, and I know their newsroom, like ours, has shrunk considerably over the last number of years. Who's getting away with what here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, who's getting away with what? And I'm certainly not picking on Buddy Dyer or anybody like that. Who's getting away with what at City Hall? We used to have a journalist parked there at City Hall all day long. That was his one or her job, to be parked there and to see what was going on and to check on those people, who need to be held accountable.
Yep.
We don't have that anymore. So it makes you wonder what is going on behind the scenes in some of these municipalities.
Yeah, you cannot deny that we have this bigger distrust for media, and the media is struggling to find this balance between the Walter Cronkite ethic and the billion-dollar industry that's becoming. Local media, especially local papers, they're going to be history in 10 years. I'm just telling you, or history in the way that we know them. To your point, 1/5 of the workforce is not going to deliver the accountability that's necessary. I'll give you one example of that. On homelessness, here in Central Florida, where we live, the Orlando Sentinel, as a publication, was absolutely critical in turning homelessness around. We have, actually, total coincidence, show the wall here. This is our Change Everything office. We put up some of the articles just that the Orlando Sentinel had written on homelessness over the years. And Scott, I'll tell you that when I was leading that initiative, I don't do that anymore. We have some great folks leading that now. But when I was leading that initiative, the Sentinel, as we were walking as a community down the road of exploring homelessness, they were key in when we found out, for example, that we had thousands of people on our streets who were homeless not by choice, but because they had disabilities, mental illness. The Sentinel reported that. Kate Santich, the reporter for the Sentinel, covered that story, and all of a sudden public policy began to turn because politicians were held accountable.
That's it.
They covered veterans who were homeless, and those stories then garnered more public policy pressure. I think the only thing that keeps politicians accountable is the media.
Yep.
I do, and so that's where I do struggle with. Listen, I'll just give you my opinion. I speak for myself only. I do think that the media, especially nationally, has a huge problem, and they are fighting a battle between journalistic ethics and billion-dollar companies that own them, and this idea that they're not biased when they're all biased both to their personal opinions and, more importantly, they're biased to money and the money they have to make. They're losing that battle, and even if they're making money, they're probably failing to create real dialogue and deliver real truth. So I think the national media is failing, but they're making money, some of them, but they're failing on their commitment to us. And where we really suffer is in the local communities where that truth is so necessary.
The truth is vital. You just hit it right on the head. I'm looking at all these great articles about homelessness. I mean, if it weren't for the Orlando Sentinel, would that subject be brought to the forefront? Because I can tell you this, the local television stations are not going to do it. They're not going to do it. Is it going to get ratings? Does it translate to money? No, if it bleeds, it leads. I mean, that's the way our business is.
So let me transition a second to another topic that I was thinking about last week, and that is what is the young man, and someone here tell me, who from the Parkland, he was one of the Parkland survivors, David
Hogg.
David Hogg.
David Hogg, yeah.
So a lot of controversy. David Hogg survived the shooting, and he and a few of the other Parkland kids have really become powerful. That's the term that you can't deny, whether you support or don't support what they're doing. Powerful advocates for what they believe. And I'll be honest, I haven't looked at exactly his platform. Emma
Watson?
Emma, no, is it Emma Watson?
The actress?
Nope. The other young lady who shaves her head.
Oh, okay, yes, I know who you mean. I'm not.
Emma
Gonzalez,
Gonzalez.
that's
There you go.
right,
So
yeah.
Emma Gonzalez, thank you. Emma Gonzalez. Those two, they have really, really powerful platforms
They
now.
have.
I think Emma Gonzalez has like 2 million followers on Twitter now.
Yeah.
2 million. And David Hogg last week, he's become really good at this. He got his Twitter followers to plan out this Publix die-in because Publix was sending campaign contributions to Adam Putnam. Adam Putnam is a supporter of the NRA, and so all of a sudden, people are in Publixes across Central Florida and Florida and protesting, and by the end of the day, Publix is like, we're not doing that anymore. We're not supporting politicians. I'll tell you, Scott, I was torn. I actually contradicted myself like 5 times during a 48-hour period of time because, I looked at that kind of coordinated efforts against a company like Publix, who I think Publix is a good company. I think Publix are good people. Publix is owned by a lot of those that work there. People don't know that. It's owned by its employees. I was torn to see that company kind of targeted, but then at the same time, and I still have a contradictory opinion on this, I saw an advocate make change in 24 hours that didn't happen in 20 years.
And a young kid,
and
too,
a young kid.
16.
Yes. So I'm thinking about the media, this conversation with the media, where
Right.
who does hold Publix accountable? Who holds Adam Putnam accountable? I don't know Adam.
Yeah.
He might be the next governor. Who holds him accountable? I do think there's a conversation in our society that says, hey, where do we find a role for journalism where there is accountability for the mayor of Orlando, there is accountability for the president of the United States, there is accountability for Publix, and if there's not, do people feel like all they have left is to lay on the ground in Publix? And does that make sense? The idea of finding a balance between institutions like journalism that hold us accountable and advocacy that helps hold accountability while at the same time having discourse. I was conflicted.
Yeah, and I feel your pain because I'm in the same boat. We're a society of extremes now. And on one hand, I love what that kid is doing in South Florida. He's a young kid, and yet he's an activist, and he's forcing change. To me, though, and I may be talking out of both sides of my mouth as well. To me, there's a difference between protest and mob mentality. Now, I'm not going to get political. Quite frankly, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. If that's political, that's fine. But I've never held a gun in my life. Scared to death of guns. Don't want any part of them. Okay? But when you're getting people across the state of Florida to lie down in Publix shopping stores because that's a company that supports somebody who supports the NRA.
It's a reach.
I think the NRA can be a scapegoat. Let's put it that way. I think there, and I know you probably plan on doing this, I think there are deeper issues in our society besides the NRA. But I do worry about this. I do worry about protest. Good. Protest all you want. Mob mentality, I'm not so comfortable with that. Now, maybe what he's doing is right in the middle, but to me, when I saw the pictures of people lying down, and my Publix,
you couldn't even get your Publix sub, Scott.
Exactly, couldn't get my pub sub.
Oh no, you probably could just order it through Instacart.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
that
There you
would be
go.
fine, so.
A little disturbing. Happy for him, knowing that his social activism is working. But when do you cross that line into mob mentality?
Yeah, it's tough, and I don't have an answer, and I don't even have a solid opinion personally. Where I think I wound up 5 minutes ago when I thought about it,
right?
Because I'll go back and forth. Is I think that it's not even about what's right or wrong. It's about the fact that when we lose faith in institutions like our journalists,
Yes.
when we lose faith in politicians, you said mob mentality. Well, in anarchy, listen, my daughters say this, Andre, in The Walking Dead, you will be Rick, or
Right.
who watches The Walking Dead?
I don't.
Negan. They said, Dad, you're going to be Rick or Negan. So these are, what they're saying is, in the zombie apocalypse, it's chaos, and it's mob mentality, and it's the big daddy warlord that there's, in anarchy, only a mob can exist and keep you safe. I'm not saying that's right, Scott. I'm more saying I think that's how people feel right now.
Yes.
People feel like that institutions have failed them.
Yes.
They feel like they can't find truth.
Yep.
They feel like they can't trust their local politician. They don't know about the president. They don't know if Publix or the NRA or they feel so out of control that I think if this is going to be, I think my point is this is going to be the norm because what people are figuring out is I have no other recourse. If I don't want to go to a school where I feel like I'm going to get shot and I don't feel, whether it's true or not, that there's anyone out there who cares and that there's any change that's going to happen, then I'm going to organize people to lay in the middle of a supermarket or lay in the middle of the highway and I just think it's not going anywhere because we again struggle.
We don't
to have
trust in our institutions.
We don't
You're
trust,
absolutely
and we don't trust in each other, and we don't know each other. Scott, I'll give you an example. Community without community, connectivity without community equals chaos, and that's I think what we're seeing. I was at a dinner. John Bustecker, I don't know if you know John. He was a local reporter. Now he does a lot of work in the community with nonprofits. He does a lot of film and video. But John's wife invited me about 6 months ago to host something she was calling a dinner party project, and it was on homelessness. So I was a host. There were like 15 people there. And at this dinner party project, she invited 15 people, Republican, Democrat, black, white, Hispanic, young, old, purposely. And my job was to talk about homelessness and why people are homeless and to engage all of these people in dialogue and try to create a conversation with people who had different viewpoints. If you did this on Twitter or Facebook,
forget it.
Within 5 minutes, it would be total chaos.
It would devolve.
It would devolve
Yeah.
into madness and really something that's very negative. Here's what was fascinating, though. We got these folks together. We're talking about homelessness, and the dialogue was the same words that would be used on social media. One gentleman was like, I love the president, and, I'd build a wall, and I'd put the homeless on the other side of the wall with everyone else who shouldn't be here. And there was this young person who is very much liberal and a Democrat, and they were like, the president is the worst president we ever had, and he is a racist. And, I mean, it started right there, the same words. But what happened over a 60-minute period of time is people looking in each other's eyes, hearing the humanity. One gentleman, the gentleman who was talking about his support for the president, and him believing that, we need to have immigration policies at some level. He's having this conversation, and he says, let me say this. I fought in Vietnam, and, I don't like to talk about this a lot, but I fought in Vietnam, and I can just remember seeing 3 of my best friends shot and killed and dead in front of me, and it changed me. It made me want to protect my country at all costs, and it made me proud to be an American. And that's why if someone comes against my country, I just get upset. And Scott, I saw in that moment the humanity and the connection between 2 people melt the bias. It melted. Suddenly, these same words, when it connected to a person, and all of a sudden this young gal looked at this older Republican and said, you know what, I might not agree with you, but now I know where you're coming from.
Exactly right.
How do we get that back?
I don't know.
How do we
Andre.
get that back?
I tell you what, you have wisdom beyond your years, my man. It's about relationships. That's what it's all about. In essence, it's about relationships. I personally believe we are put on this earth to build relationships.
Yeah.
And I'll relate it back to what we talked about originally. Magic, hire a head coach. Yesterday, Steve Clifford. I go on the air and say, Steve Clifford, good man, solid hire, good head coach.
Oh, by the way, real quick, in case someone's wondering, Steve Clifford worked for Van Gundy.
Yes.
That was when the Magic had
went to the NBA Finals in 2009. Basically, that team revolutionized the game of NBA basketball, because now what we see in today's NBA with everybody going three-point crazy, that was started here in Orlando by Stan Van Gundy and by people like Steve Clifford.
Yep, and so Steve Clifford has the chops to maybe be one of the NBA great coaches. He did great he was at Charlotte, right?
He was at Charlotte. Didn't do great. Made
Well,
the playoffs 2 out of the 5 years. But he's a solid head coach. Is he God's gift to head coaching the NBA? Absolutely not. But let's give him a chance. That was my point. And to your point, I had read this stuff all day long about Steve Clifford and the Orlando Magic, and they don't know what they're doing, and the rhetoric and the names being used, calling the DeVos family this and that, and Alex Martin's the CEO, this and that. I'm like, holy cow, we have become a culture of outrage. It's not only over there in news, it's over here in sports as well. So I went on the air immediately. We went on the air a little bit early yesterday. I said, all of you people who are on my Twitter mentions talking about the Orlando Magic as if they are Lucifer, light up the phone lines right now. 855-244, blah, 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 blah. Nothing. Like 0 phone calls for the first hour of where are you?
So
where
Scott,
are you?
What you're saying is it's easy to get on Twitter.
Anonymity.
It's easy to get on Facebook. And when you don't have to be accountable, when you don't have to connect with another person, suddenly you take on this persona.
Yes.
And I will say this too, Scott. I do think that if we're not careful, we begin to look at life through the paradigm of the aggregate. You know what? If you look at all the comments on Steve Clifford, let me back up and say this: if you were to send out a survey to every Orlando Magic fan and season ticket holder and survey them on their opinion of the hire of Steve Clifford, I bet you a large percentage of them would be positive. But you'd have some big percentage that would say, hey, we don't like this. And then you'd have a small percentage who are idiots who would say, blah, blah, F this guy, he's a jerk, whatever. But those little small percentages of negativity are
They mean a lot.
They mean a lot. They're magnified. They're the retweets.
Yes.
And by the way, they're what the idiot media covers 24/7 and makes a bunch of money on. Now, not ESPN. You're not idiot. And 96.5. Anything that Scott Anez works for is not idiot
You're
media.
good, man.
Let
You're
me
good.
let me just clarify
All
that
right.
Andre Bailey and all his intellectual properties change everything. Does not know. I'm just saying that I've seen so many times, even in sports. This pisses me off in sports a lot. Outrage over LeBron James' comment in the press conference.
Yeah.
Really, it was 5
Yes.
people.
Yes.
It was 5 freaking people on Twitter who were like, LeBron James shouldn't have said that. and then a major news outlet knows that bleeds.
Yep.
So it leads.
Yep.
And now something that is an aggregate, there's an aggregate of outrage, it's being peddled as truth. And then we just sort of believe it. It's kind of back to the idea that listen, Scott, I have all kinds of opinions, right? And most days at my core, I don't really give a shit what anybody thinks. I'm just telling you right now. Like, I wake up every day. I try to be the best person I can.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived my life. I'm 41 years old. I've made some great decisions. I've messed up about every way you can mess up. But I wake up every day and I just have to do the best I can, try to be the best person that I can. This idea that I could spend my time trying to have dialogue and work with leaders, and that someone would find one thing I said that was controversial and pull it out and brand me with that.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not living in that world.
Mm-hmm.
I won't allow that. And at some point, I think all of us, we have to push back on that. We have to get to a place where that's not acceptable to us anymore. We say, wait, hold on, how many fans really said LeBron should? Oh, really? There was 12?
Yeah.
Hey, ESPN, hey, CNN, hey, maybe that isn't an accurate thing to say. I think we got to have a little pushback and not allow ourselves to create truth that's not real.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's a very good way to put it. Again, culture of outrage, gotcha society, social media. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it, but when I do, it drags me down.
I just got to say this. Seth Golub.
We love Seth.
Seth says this. Didn't Rob Hennigan say, quote, "It's all about relationships"?
He did, and we know where he is now. He's the director of Insight and Foresight there in Oklahoma City.
Is he really?
He is.
Oh, gosh. I want to say this about Rob Hennigan just because it's brought up. This is where the NBA is so unfair, and it's just no one's fault, but the NBA is unfair in this way. The NBA is about players, my friend.
Yep.
When you get LeBron James,
Yep.
you win. Mm-hmm. Do you know how I know that? Because every team that's had LeBron James in the past 8 years has made it to the NBA
and
Finals.
Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant.
The NBA is about teams getting talent and winning. And so nothing else really matters. Coaches, I don't want to discredit a lot of these coaches.
Organizations matter. Organizations matter.
Organizations matter.
But you have to have the talent first.
You cannot win championships without top-tier talent.
That is correct.
How about that?
I definitely agree with that, especially in the NBA.
So, Rob Hennigan. Rob Hennigan did a pretty good job at Oklahoma City of drafting talent. Wasn't he at Oklahoma City?
He was an assistant there in Oklahoma City. Before that, I think he was a video guy and an assistant in San Antonio. So he really didn't have much to do with what went on.
He's credited with being a part of picking some players that wound up having some success.
Sure. And look,
he came here, and that didn't happen. But if it did, he would be a hero.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple.
Yeah.
If you can. I said this on a blog last night. If Steve Clifford can help decide which player is going to be an all-star in 2 weeks, he's earned his paycheck right there.
Let's give him a chance.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Let's give him a chance. And all this rhetoric, all this baloney, all this nonsense, it's not good for anybody. It's not productive for anybody. You know, we talk about relationships, and I know we're probably going to get onto a little bit of a tangent here, but in relation to sports, we've had a major controversy going on in the National Football League with the national anthem. And it's been going on for a couple of years now.
Really? I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, you didn't hear about that?
No.
You never heard of Colin Kaepernick, huh?
No.
And I think that controversy is born from lack of relationship. Because you look at the NBA right now. There is a relationship between player and owner. Never been better. With Adam Silver as commissioner and the Players and Players Association, it's never been better. They're going to get together on a new collective bargaining agreement, and everybody's going to sing Kumbaya. You look at the National Football League and what has happened with the national anthem controversy. Now, there are other issues here, as we all know. But the reason why it's gotten so out of control is because there is zero relationship between the players union, and the owners and the commissioner, Roger Goodell. Zero. Controversy starts with Colin Kaepernick and a few others kneeling or sitting for the national anthem. And the protest is certainly rightful, protesting a problem, or depending on how you see it, a perceived problem with police brutality on black people. Then all of a sudden, the president opens his mouth, and calls the football players SOBs. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, the following week, what happens? Everybody's standing up in protest. Of what? What are you guys protesting? We don't know what you're protesting. Like your message is like totally gone now. That's not protest. When you're standing up against the president, that's not protest. That's hissy fit. That's what that is. That's hissy fit. That's not protest.
Yeah.
So the message got totally lost. And then you have the owners. The owners are just as much to blame as the players here, Andre, because the owners come in and have no idea how to handle this, and they see the television ratings going down and down. Now, granted, the NFL and the ratings. I mean, the NBA would love to have the NFL's ratings, even when they're, they've been toppling for a couple of years. Their ratings are still huge, but the owners are seeing their numbers going down and down and down every week. They have no idea how to handle this. So they come out in the meeting last week. We got to compromise. We got to compromise. Players on the field, they're going to stand. But players, if you don't want to come out onto the field, you can sit in the locker room for the national anthem. And that was their compromise. Who are you compromising with? Yourselves.
Yeah.
There was not one player, not one person from the Players Association in that meeting. So how can you call it a compromise? I think you have, and again, relationships. Yes. And I know we're getting off on a tangent here, but there is absolutely zero relationship. There's so much mistrust on the players' part toward the owners that there is no relationship whatsoever. I'll tell you this, that would never happen in the NBA.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that the issue that really got brought to the forefront there is that the NFL players don't trust the owners. And I think whether that's true, whether that's right or not, that they don't trust them, there's no trust, there's no relationship. And so immediately, when you have no relationship, right, everything now is taken through fear and negativity. And I think the NFL is in big trouble. I think the NFL over the next decade is in big trouble with CTE. This is a whole other discussion, but with CTE and with obvious, there is some unraveling there in their fabric that they're going to have to deal with. Before we get you out of here, by the way, I really enjoy this conversation. Before we get you out of here, though, I want to talk.
It's been about 5 minutes, hasn't it?
About 26 minutes.
Like that? Oh, okay.
But I want to talk to you a little bit about you've had a big few weeks, a couple months with your daughter.
Yeah.
So we started talking a little bit about, Scott, I believe this. I think we have some massive challenges in our society right now. We've got political challenges. We have challenges, as we just talked about, in journalism. We have challenges. We can't even play a damn sports game without falling apart as a society. There's been a riot in the middle of an NBA and NFL game because we picked a coach. I mean, that's how far we've fallen apart. And by the way, we have real problems. Gun violence, a real problem. Mm-hmm. Whatever your politics are, everyone mourns and weeps when we see this carnage that's happening and not just in schools now, but in Vegas and the Pulse nightclub. We have real problems, and I think we're struggling to find solutions. I would just say this. I know it sounds too philosophical. I think sometimes we're looking for the answers in not the wrong places, in the incomplete places. I think sometimes it does come back to what we're talking about. How do we reconnect with relationships with each other? How do we look inside ourselves and ask ourselves tough questions? You've raised a daughter, coming full circle, who I think embodies a lot of the values that I love and respect about you. And I'm a big believer in one person at a time, all of us ourselves, trying to do that moral inventory, trying to ask ourselves the tough questions. Talk a little bit about your daughter, her graduation, and what did you do to inspire her to be someone that can change the world?
No, it was all her mother. It wasn't any of me. you're gonna make me cry every time. Like the older I get, the more I tear up. Why is that? It's insane. When I talk about my daughter,
Glaucoma.
I start to tear up. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's glaucoma. Yeah, she graduated from the University of Florida 3.5 weeks ago. And we went up for the graduation, obviously, and she had written a letter to us. And she said, open the letter as you're on your way to the graduation. She had to get there a little bit early, obviously. So it's raining, it's pouring, and I'm trying to get to the O'Connell Center up there in Gainesville. And my wife opens the letter, and she starts reading it out loud. And dude, I lost it. I totally lost it because the things that, and you're going through this now.
Mm-hmm. My daughter just
and I
graduated
told
high
you,
school last week.
Exactly. You're going to see this where the stuff that you don't think she sees, but you hope she sees, she saw it. She saw everything. And granted, I'm not the greatest father and not the greatest husband in the world, but she saw the respect that I have for her mother and vice versa in our home. She got the whole love thing.
That's in the letter. All this is in the letter.
All this is in the letter, and I mean, I'm literally bawling.
Driving to this graduation.
She's like me. She's not the most sentimental person in the world, but as we're on our way to the O'Connell Center, I'm like, I got to stop and pull over. I can't do this anymore. She got everything, Andre. She got the whole thing. She got everything, and then she goes into mom and lists things that she saw from mom and dad. I lost it. So, and again, not that I am a perfect parent by any means, but, you know, you talked about the school shooting incidents that we're having in this country right now. And I don't want to get you in trouble, and I certainly don't want cards and letters to fly into your office. But look, we can talk about fortifying our schools. Okay, we can talk about more police in our schools. Personally, my personal opinion, I think we need to build more schools. I think we need to build more high schools. Because these high schools with 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 kids, it's like a college campus. We need to give these kids more individual attention again. Those to me are Band-Aids. Okay, the thing that I go back to, two things. Number one, we've taken God out of the public square. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that. And I know I'm probably not supposed to say that being a member of the media, but we have. We have gone through the process of taking God out of the public square. Somehow we need to find our way back there. That's number one. Number two, let's love our kids again. And I know I'm painting with a broad brush. There are a lot of great parents out there. But parents, let's love our kids again. What I mean by love is spend time with them. Look, you know, I grew up in a single family home. I grew up with a single mom doing the best she could, working 2 jobs. She wasn't home an awful lot, but we knew, like my sister and I knew, we were loved. We were greatly loved. That matters to kids. We need to get back, I think, to basics today. We need to start paying attention to our kids, what they're doing on social media. It's scary. We didn't grow up with that. It's scary what these kids are going through on social media. These video games these kids are playing with the blood and the guts and all this stuff. I mean, they don't have processors yet. They just don't. Kids don't have the processors as adults have. We need to lead them through that. And that's one of the things that was evident in that letter we got from our daughter. Like, her mother did a great job in raising her because she got it. We led her through all of those minefields. We need to start going back to that. And I know there are an awful lot of single moms, single dads out there, and you can't spend, I get that. I understand that. But I think it's time to start loving our kids again.
Yeah, I stumbled upon, I like to take time every week to find a video or something to read that to inspire me. I really try to get in the habit of doing that. I'm terrible at it, but I've tried recently to get in that habit. I found this video, and I'll post it. I want people to see it. Dylan Klebold's mother, the original, one of the 2 original Columbine shooters, his mother did a TED Talk. It is, you've seen it?
I've heard about
it. It's crazy.
Is it?
Well, she gets up, and it's years later now, and this was Columbine 15 years ago, roughly, maybe 20 years ago. the first
almost
mass
20.
shooting, and really what many sociologists would say, the inspiration for what started a tidal wave of these kids. This last shooter, can't even remember his name. I can't, because there's so many of them. But he went on. They found a video of him saying, "I'm going to be the next mass shooter." And
Cruz,
so
yeah.
Cruz made this almost new. He made mass murder. These Columbine kids made mass murder something that someone who's deranged would want to do. So Dylan Klebold's mother gets up in front of this crowd and she's giving a TED talk on "I'm the mother of a mass shooter," and she starts talking about it. And I mean, I'm watching her in front of hundreds of people have to talk about her pride and joy. She said, "I remember the last thing he said as he walked out the door that day to go to school, and he just kissed me and he said goodbye." And he was just here was her point though, is that he had mental illness. He was a sick individual. She didn't know it.
Yeah.
She's like, "I spent time with him." She's like, "We were not gun owners. We didn't own guns." She said this though. If I look, and I'm paraphrasing, and I'll post the video in this link because I think it's so good. She said, "Listen, he was just connected to so many things. He was connected to the other gentleman. What was the other mass shooter in that situation? Dylan Klebold, and he was connected." She said this to a mass murderer. This other gentleman was really a homicidal maniac. He was connected to guns, and I didn't know it. And it was too easy for him to be connected to those guns. He was connected to so many things, and I didn't know. And now I walk around every day. She said one story of how it chokes me. I was thinking about it. She was at work like 10 years later, and she said to a coworker, I sometimes think I just don't even deserve forgiveness. Like her, this is a mother who now has to forgive yourself. And as a society, we got to figure this out together. And I'll post it again. It was just breathtaking to me. But what it really made me think about is, to your point, it's tough being a kid nowadays. There is so much that your daughter, my kids, anyone out there listening, that their kids have to deal with. And they're connected to so much. And without shepherds, without family, without messaging and people to give them values. You talked about God a few minutes ago, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, God, Scott's gotten into religion." And I would just say this: values matter.
Yeah.
What you believe matters. If you're out there, you're an atheist, you don't believe in God, I'm not offended by that. I don't care. You believe what you want. I would just say, though, that the idea that as individuals, as kids growing up in schools, when we live in a world full of choices and full of noise and full of negativity and full of everything that we could possibly want or not want at any given moment, but we don't have anchors in our life. Like we talked about in the beginning, when you have no North Star, you have no direction.
And doesn't it go back to community too, like you were saying too, right?
Yep. So, that's I love the story of your daughter. And but where's she going now? What's her next step?
Well, she is she's doing an internship now. She's going to go back to the University of Florida in the fall and get her master's degree in a semester, which is wonderful. So Dad is off the hook come December.
Nice.
I will actually have a few dollars in my pocket, which will be very, very nice.
Wow. It's a journey. It's a journey, and again, I think you've done a great job. I'm a big fan of you and your wife and what you're about, and I just think, again, we've got to start somewhere with dialogue. We've got to start somewhere with. I would say, let me say it this way: if we don't change the course of the culture of this country, and I mean it in a broad sense, and I'm not talking left or right, I'm talking all of it. Where is this taking us? Where are we going to be in 10 and 20 years, Scott, on this path?
You mentioned the word chaos.
Chaos. We are headed to chaos, and I think, but I don't think it has to end at that place. I think that there can be new voices. I think that there can be folks that care about what's right. I think there are people on all sides of the aisles and all sides of these arguments that when they can reconnect with their neighbor, remember this. I want everyone out there to think about this. I want you guys to think about this. we've only lived in a connected world with the internet for 15 years. 15 years?
Yeah.
How long have humans walked the earth? But we've only had the internet for 15 years. We've only had cars for 50 years. So before cars and the internet, which is only 50 years of human existence, we only lived in the distance every day that you could get up, walk away from your home, and walk back by nightfall. Because if you didn't make it back by nightfall, a bear would eat your ass. No, like you're literally getting eaten by a bear if you don't get in by nightfall.
Right.
So that's how deep your decisions were. But this is what it created. It created a world where you knew everyone around you in the most intimate way. So you had Sally over here in the house three clicks down, and Sally is kind of a mess. And Sally believes totally different than me. But I know Sally.
Right.
I know Sally's kids. I know Mark around the corner who's always saying these wild things. But I know him. The community that we had in a very practical sense as humans, we've lost it for a lot of reasons that I think are just so practical we don't think about. Yeah. And we got to figure out how to use technology, how to use a lot of our entertainment. We got to think big about how to get our culture turned back towards relationships. And I think we got to start with knowing that it's got to happen, and if we don't, we're headed for chaos.
That's very well said. And again, it goes back to discourse too, and the respect of each and every individual and the dignity of each and every individual. I don't care if you disagree with me or not. Have respect for me. I'm going to have respect for you, and I think that's been lost here too in this social media craze culture that we're in right now.
Yeah, put up that graphic. We're gonna get off here in just a second. I've held Scott. We'll put these up for everyone. But if you're out there, you're feeling a little lost, 5 ways to find direction fast. Count your blessings. Get serendipitous. Believe that the universe and God or fate or whatever is working for you. Believe it. Number 3, find an anchor, a North Star. Number 4, get a little angry. If you're angry, get angry at your life and get in a good way, turn that anger towards positive change. Number 5, do something right now. If there's something big you can do today to change your course, change your direction, I encourage you to do that today and let it be the first day of the rest of your life. Scott, I don't want to get eaten by a damn bear. I just want you to know, getting eaten by a bear would suck. So that's really the main point today. But I do want to come back as we close and say this. I think I have great hope. I have great hope for the future because I think we are getting to a place where we know something's got to change. I think, though, that ultimately that change has to start with us, with ourselves. Yeah. And if we can spread that kind of a movement, I think that's where the big hope is going to come from. You're the man, Scott Anez. Scott Anez, ESPN Radio, Orlando Magic, philanthropist, entrepreneur.
Oh, really? Philanthropist. Okay. Thank you for all you do in the community, heck, around the country, and being outspoken. We need more people like you out there. We really do. And I know you probably catch a lot of grief from a lot of people, but you need to keep speaking. I understand that, and that's a good thing, but you need to keep speaking. You need the discourse needs to continue. And maybe you can turn all those people who are being outraged on Twitter, maybe eventually you turn them around and make them your friend, and you can have a discourse and an understanding.
Yeah, let me say this as we close. This whole idea that we're going to create unity by creating uniformity is total crap. The idea that we are going to find a connection by all being the same is not going to happen.
We don't want that either.
Well,
nobody wants that.
I'll just tell you, if you look at if I have my biggest grief with I have my biggest griefs with the left and my biggest griefs with the right. One of my biggest griefs over here on this side is that we believe if we just make everyone vanilla, everyone becomes everyone, then we'll just all get along. Yeah. I'm telling you, that's not an answer. Tolerance is not the answer. The answer is we got to learn to respect the differences in each other.
Absolutely.
We got to learn that in a relationship where I see your humanity, you're different than me, I'm different than you. We believe different,
Yep.
but together, I just say this, in my community, when I've seen good things happen, it's been a faith leader, it's been a politician who doesn't believe anything.
Right.
It's been this corporate CEO who is a capitalist and is all over the board. It's been different people, different races, different beliefs, connected by a common cause and to do common good things.
Which is the relationship.
In a relationship. And that's been the game changer. And so we got to work on that. Scott Anez, so great
Thank
to
you,
have you
buddy.
here. I love you,
I
man.
appreciate
You're
it.
a
Love
good
you
guy.
too, buddy.
We're going to have you
You're
on
the
again.
man.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the crew. Thank
Thanks,
you to
guys. Marina,
everyone
thank you.
here. Everyone here. We love you. We'll talk to you soon. Change Everything Live. We'll see you again next week. Talk to you soon.